I'm Kristina, and I'm a licensed dietitian. My practice is here in Darien. I also do a lot of telehealth work with folks all over the country. So let's stand up and stretch for a sec. Yeah, we're gonna do a little exercise. Stretch. Awesome. Yeah, it feels good, right? Perfect. All right, when you're ready, everybody sit down. So I'd like to start by doing something called heart breathing. So everybody, I invite you to close your eyes. You can put your hand over your heart, which is right in the center of your chest. And we're going to take a nice big deep breath, like big diaphragmatic breath. And when you breathe out, imagine that the air that you're breathing is coming out of your heart. Okay, so we're going to take nice 5 or 6 deep breaths doing this. All right, everybody come on back. Do you feel nice and centered and grounded in your body? Yeah, heart focused breathing helps you do that. It's the initial base tool from Heartmath. I'm certified in Heartmath. Actually, Tony Robbins is also certified in Heartmath, and it was kind of a sign for me when I went to do his Unleash the Power Within and walk over the coals. I had been told you should really study this Heartmath thing and bring it into your coaching practice. And then when he talked about it, I said, okay, it's a sign. I'm going to learn how to do this. And it changed my life because if you knew who I was before, public speaking was something that gave me panic attacks. Like I would literally vomit before having to speak to people. And when I was a teacher, back to school night was my least favorite night. Like hated it, the parents coming in. So HeartMath has allowed me to, I mean, it's incredible that I could get up on stage and do this because I used to get crazy nervous even just saying my name. Hi, I'm Kristina. My favorite color is blue, all that stuff. So if you are struggling to regulate your emotions, like we've talked about how stress impacts our food choices, impacts the choices that we make, impacts our performance at work, performance with our family. HeartMath gives you real tools that you can implement in your life. I've taught it to CEOs, golfers, a lot of anxious teenagers out there. It's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to ask a little question, a little interactivity with you guys. What do Olympians, leaders, Navy SEALs, basically all successful people, have in common besides the desire to be excellent? What do you think? Shout some things out for me. They eat well. Okay, maybe. Consistency, great work ethic. You know the answer. Okay. Discipline. Yes, you're all correct. Consistency. So a bunch of things, right? But I'm going to talk to you today about resilience because this is definitely something they all share. Oh, I would love to teach everybody Heartmath. Okay, so resilience is the capacity to prepare for, recover from, adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. So imagine it's like a battery. We all get depleted sometimes, and then other things charge up our battery because we are energy systems that expend and renew this energy. So no one teaches us this stuff in school, like how to renew that battery, how to sustain that energy. And there are 4 domains of resilience. I'm going to focus today on physical and emotional. But at the center of this is something called coherence. So when you do heart breathing, it puts your body into a state of coherence. This wonderful story that I actually heard from Tony Robbins. He worked with Andre Agassi, remember the tennis player? like, okay, we don't have anyone who's too young in this audience. All right. He was number one tennis player in the world, and then he competed with Pete Sampras for that number one spot. And Andre fell from grace. Like, I think he was, taking some drugs and he didn't want to give up tennis, but he fell out of placement. He was beyond 150 in the world and he needed to get back on track. So Tony came to his house. It's not in his biography, by the way. He didn't include it. It's interesting. And he played a video, basically of a highlight reel of all his winningest moments, and stopped at one in particular, one where he was kind of like doing this intimidating walk and staring down the other guy. Yeah, the strut. And so he paused it and he said, Andre, like, what were you thinking and feeling in this moment? What was going on? And he's like, oh, yeah, I woke up that morning and I felt in every cell of my body that I was going to win. And I just had utter confidence. And I just was trying to communicate that with my body language that that other guy shouldn't have even bothered to show up. And he said, well, that's a peak state. That's a performance state. That's you put all your physical training and you put your emotional regulation together. Now all those hours of hitting that tennis ball, like your body's not going to betray you. You will win. And so when we start to practice emotional regulation, and it's a constant practice for me, believe me, but having tools in your toolkit, like that's what it's about, right? Because we all get knocked down. We all do. And then you got to get back up. Knock down, get back up. Yeah. So we're talking here today about metabolic health. Um, and we are living longer. We are, thanks to modern medicine. But that's not really the name of the game. It's like quality of life as you live longer. And 80% of the population is going to get one of these diseases just because you're getting older. And I don't subscribe to that. I say no. So, yeah. Yeah, let's just say no to that. And this is what we want it to look like. This graph shows that yes, we're living, like an average 78 years. But if you do your part, right? Like, okay, you get lab tests and you go do things and you exercise and you make good food choices and you're around people you love and you're doing work you love and you make life count, then the potential is enormous. Because we're all going to go. We're all going to go, but it ideally would look like this. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. Ciao. Okay, so these are some things that we absolutely know for sure. For sure, for sure. We know that social support is the number one. Like loneliness is a killer. We saw that during the pandemic. It's really terrible for your mental health. So social support is number one. And if you're struggling with food, getting with a support team, in a community. I have one, Ben has one, Robert has one, you know, um, Dr. Tro has a huge community. So getting with a community is really, really important. Um, we also know, and this is confounding to me, but we know that caloric restriction does extend lifespan. However, we also know, and it's in the zeitgeist right now, skeletal muscle is your single biggest longevity organ. However, you need to eat more to build muscle, which is something that Robert is going to talk to us about. Um, Super important, the skeletal muscle piece. So, this maybe it's about the cycles that we go through with that. We also know that diet, it just impacts multi generations, right? So when, Dr. Salerno is talking about heavy metals and all this, all this pollution, and now we're talking about microplastics, it's going to impact 4 generations down the line. The sedentary risk ratio is a 3.0. So let me break that down what that is. So not exercising. And what Amy said is correct. Like, don't exercise for weight loss. You exercise for your metabolic health. Um, the risk ratio of smoking is 1.5. And what that means is that you're 1.5 times more likely to die from a complication related to smoking. So the risk ratio of just being sedentary and not exercising is double that. Why? Any ideas? More frailty? We're already losing muscle mass as we age. So you need to preserve it. You need to get better with each year. And why is muscle mass important? Insulin sensitivity, yes. That's your biggest site of glucose disposal. It's like your metabolic sink, we call it. But also, you want to be mobile and not fall down, because the moment we fall down, we just break a hip, you could be gone within the year. So these are like 5 pillars to really be thinking about with your health. These are all sort of like levers that you can pull on. And personally, we could do a whole talk on sleep physiology. I think that's actually the basis of all of it, because I know for myself, and like sleep has been my personal kryptonite since I was a child. That really leads to good decision making, and like whether you have the energy to have a good workout session, whether you make good choices with your food. So like the sleep, and like I mentioned earlier, if you don't sleep for 5 days straight, you're pre-diabetic. Boom. So sleep, super critical. So how do we get best results? My philosophy is that 80% of the whole game is your mindset. So um, we're talking about your behavior and habits. We're talking about how you think about things, and this emotional regulation piece. It's bigger than the what you're eating, honestly. But I also believe having a good strategy is important. So this is, we love low carb. It's a better strategy. But your strategy is, I believe, very dictated on your personal genetics, based on the lab tests you do. Maybe you wear a continuous glucose monitor. It gives you, like, any device is going to give you information. And we have a lot of those tracking devices now, which is great. So here's my client, Alex. He did a test called the True Age Complete. And in 5 short months, he reversed his aging, his speed of aging. So the True Age Complete gives you lots of different reports, even like telomeres, stem cells, a whole bunch of things. So the genetic pace is like an epigenetic clock. There are lots of clocks that measure the speed of your aging, but this happens to be a really good one. And you can see that he gained like months. So instead of aging at 1.2 times per biological year, in 5 short months, which is nothing in terms of lifetime, that now he's aging like at 0.9 per biological year. So this is just another report inside of the True Age Complete, and then in 5 short months, his fit age improved by 4 years. Imagine if I had this data. It's so great. He was the first one to give it to me. So I practice something called personalized nutrition, and it's what Dr. John Salerno does too. But you really kind of want to look at the individual's person. My my specialty is the nutrigenomics data, but I also do food sensitivities and other lab tests and really take into account like an individual's lifestyle. Um, so personalized nutrition, it's has actually a lot of data. You can Google this, or a lot of studies on it. And what's cool is I found this study, the Food for Me study, which was the very first randomized control trial on personalized nutrition. It was a cohort of 7 countries that worked together on this. They looked at very specific genotypes. FTO is related to ghrelin, like that hunger hormone. FADS one is omega-3 fatty acids. TCF7L2 is related to carbohydrate usage. ApoE, highly studied, it's a cholesterol gene, very related to Alzheimer's. And MTHFR, which is like one that a lot of people out in the space, or MTHFR, which is such an easy fix since 33% of the population has an issue converting to folate. Just take a supplement. But it was neat that they had this data, and what they found was that after 6 months, people who actually received personalized advice like did much better in those labs. Like their lab markers showed much improvement. So here's an example of one of the tests I run. This is an omega-3 index. And we know that like fatty acid profiles are really important for managing inflammation in the body. This one is very inexpensive. It's $60. You can do a pinprick test at home, and it's very valuable information. So we know that omega-3 fatty acids do all this wonderful stuff. Okay, this is the food sensitivity test I do. It's called the P88 dietary antigen. I used to run another one that didn't give me very good data, to be honest with you. This one does 4 different immune pathways: IgE, IgG, IgG4, and complement. And what's the snippet I put here on this slide is that it shows all the anti-nutrients in food that one could possibly come across, and you can see by reactivity what the anti-nutrients that bring up the most problem. And when you get to correlate this with genetic data, so for example, you see histamine. There are a lot of foods that are high histamine, but might be considered healthy, like fermented foods. So I have a histamine issue. I don't tolerate histamine super well, and histamine is very high in alcohol, so don't tolerate that well. Smoked foods, aged cheeses, and fermented foods. So I can have some, but not a lot. Avocados even, I can have some, but not a lot. Okay, this is the organic acids test. This is a urine test. So remember when I talked about metabolites in my intro, the byproducts of your metabolism. So this shows all those byproducts. Like, what does it look like? And this client of mine, very high ketones coming out in his urine. Okay, molds and mycotoxins. So this is a test that I don't run very often. I do it for very tough cases, like really mysterious cases, people that are like, I've seen all the doctors, but I don't know what's going on with me. And unfortunately, molds are just a problem that are not quite recognized yet, but they are this leading cause of debilitating fatigue. I had a client who did really well on her keto diet. She lost 25 pounds. She was already on thyroid medicine. We got that all dialed in. She was like, I still just don't have any energy. Like it's not the food. She was way fat adapted, all that. And I said, she has 2 kids who are like national rowers. And we looked at her genetics, and you have the Olympian genes. You should be working out like you do. You have these amazing fitness genetics. She's like, I don't have energy. So we did this test, and sure enough, mold, like really high mold. And so, and she lives in New York State, close to some wetlands. And so she had a mold person come in and assess her home, and sure enough, moldy home. And it was really causing her a lot of fatigue. I had another person, like itchy skin all over, just itchy. But of course, she only came to see me. She wanted to lose 10 pounds. Well, that's like a lot of people. They're like, I just want to lose a little weight. And meanwhile, like, didn't think itchy skin all over was a huge problem. And so cleaned up her diet. Okay, great. She was drinking a lot of wine. Wine is very moldy. Coffee can be very moldy. Certain nuts, especially peanuts. Peanuts are very high in aflatoxin, that first one. And so then, like the itch, so cleaning up some things, now she was just itchy on her wrists. Okay, this itchy wrist thing is really weird. Let's do this mold test. Sure enough, molds. So now she needs to do like detoxification protocols, and that's a whole other thing. Now we know we can all go to Dr. Salerno to get IV therapy if we need to detox mold. Okay, so this is another one. This is a stool test, and it tests these 6 different areas. A lot of people with digestive issues, right? Your your microbiome really talks to your brain. So you want to make sure that all things are well with the microbiome. And this is just a snippet of the test. This shows gut barrier integrity. And you see on the bottom it says high zonulin. High zonulin happens when you eat wheat, eat gluten that has been sprayed with glyphosate. And our wheat in this country is sprayed with a lot of glyphosate. So that causes leaky gut syndrome. And leaky gut leads to autoimmune issues, mood disorder, joint pain, you name it. Okay, so I said I do this nutrigenomics testing. Well, what is nutrigenomics? It's the science of looking at the genetics of nutrition. Okay, we're not analyzing diseases and real problem genes, but we're all the same here in this room, pretty much, 99.9%. But there is that tiny difference, that zero point 0.1. And it's the same with wolves and dogs, and we know how many breeds of dogs there are. So that's really like as nuanced as that. So we are the same in a lot of ways, and there's good solid information for all of us. And then there's some things that we need to dial in more specifically to you. And DNA is like a language. So imagine, the words coat, goat, and boat. Completely different words, spelling change of one letter. It's meaningful. It's meaningful. So your DNA is this language. The report I do, it looks at mental health genes, which is really like an interesting problem now. Um, and we look at pathways. So you can look at one gene and know kind of what it does, but you want to look at it in a context. So, we're looking at it systems, cellular, we're looking at cardiovascular health, hormones, energy, different areas. I wanted to mention this one because it pertains to my client Alex. So MTNR1B, it's a melatonin receptor gene. What happens is with certain people who eat late at night, it really spikes glucose, like glucose in such a way that it will lead to diabetes, even if you're eating low carb. Okay. So, and I've seen it now with several of my people on a CGM. I kept telling Alex, you need to eat earlier. he's from another country originally. So culturally, this was very hard for him. And he would not change this until he started wearing a CGM and he started seeing red like all night long. It scared him. And that's where like a CGM is really, really helpful. He's not the only one who, I'd kind of harp on this, just stop eating earlier, stop eating earlier. But when I see this gene, like you have to, right? So, all right. So the three big C's also, clock, content, calories. Like, so the meal timing is your clock. Like, when am I eating? The content, what am I eating? What are you choosing to eat? And then this calories piece, like how much am I eating? I used to fall into the camp, and I think a lot of low carb people do. Like, you can eat as much as you want, doesn't matter. It's all about insulin. It's just all about insulin. There's like no calories. And actually, it was Robert Sykes who really made a very convincing argument for me that like no, the calories they like really matter. And I've seen it with my clients. Like I had a guy who was over 300 pounds, loved to eat, and we were doing low carb, and he wasn't losing a pound, like not a pound. And so, what are you doing? And he was basically eating a charcuterie board every night before his dinner. And I was like, "Yeah, okay, logically, like you can't do that if you, you know. Um, but the whole idea of like tracking and getting precise and all this stuff, like I had a mental block against it. So, you know, I was a perfect intuitive eater, like what Amy talks about, like perfect. But there is such a thing. Also, there's the other side. For those of you like cannot actually tend to undereat or be really good at your restriction, the calories, and he's going to talk about that. It's important. Um, so calories matter, but I want to talk about a different kind of energy balance real quick before we break for lunch. Constant energy expenditures without the balance of adequate rest and recovery, they're going to lead to your burnout, errors, health challenges, diminished performance. So, Heartmath has done a lot of experiments to show what emotional dysregulation will do to your physiology. Okay. This is a husband and wife arguing, so you can see argument happens here. It's heated, argument's over, but he doesn't cool down. They've done they did a really cool experiment with a police officer responding to a domestic abuse situation, which is the scariest thing that a police officer can actually respond to. And before learning Heartmath, the police officer stayed dysregulated for nearly 24 hours. So imagine he's going home to wife and kids. He even shows up at work the next day not well, not in his body. So, like, emotional dysregulation has a physiological impact on your heart and your muscle mass, all the things. Like your body just doesn't work properly. So I'm going to show you a quick movie. You cover your ears. You're not going to like this. see the world through how you feel. Yeah, so what is your emotional soundtrack? So we have depleting and renewing emotions. These are all the consequences of emotions that deplete you. Reduced muscle mass, brain cell death, impaired memory, accelerated aging, impaired mental function, and diminished performance. So stress is not just in your mind. Okay, like your mind and body are not disconnected. Renewing emotions, expressing appreciation, gratitude, courage, these increase your longevity, increase your resilience, improve your memory, problem solving, intuition, and creativity, and improve your job performance and achievement. And all of that, it creates that state of coherence that's so important, which is an optimal state in which the heart, mind, and emotions are aligned and in sync. So you too can be like Andre Agassi winning, when everything is firing, it's not the skill. Like you can't do it. It's just that everything is working together. And then your immune system and your hormones and your nervous system it's like all functioning together. And this is because the heart and the brain are connected, and the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. And your heart, when you have an energy system, this has been measured, it's like 3 feet past your body. Like people can feel your energy when you walk in the room. Like when someone's in a really bad mood and you're gonna steer clear. Yeah. Or you walk into a space, a shop, a whatever, and it's got a bad vibe, right? So like they've even done experiments. We walk into a subway or a crowded space, and if you start practicing heart coherence, you can kind of influence the space that you're in. So that's pretty powerful. Spouses, they regulate to each other's breathing. There was a really cool experiment with a dog and a boy. So the dog and the boy are separated in 2 different rooms, and they're stressed out about it because they were together, they got separated, and then they reunite the dog and the boy, and their heart syncs up. Like they have everybody hooked up. And so when you're with people you love, like you tend to, flow. But it's a real thing. So we're gonna do quick coherence here before breaking for lunch. So this is another added step to the heart breathing. So you're going to focus your attention again, area of your heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest. And you want to eventually get so good at this, you don't need to put your hand on your heart. You can just do quick coherence. I did it once in the car in the Bronx. I was driving in the Bronx. It was crazy traffic. I'm like, let me see. I hooked myself up to my little monitor to see if I could do quick coherence with my eyes open. And I succeeded. I only stayed in like 10 seconds, but I was proud of myself. Okay, so we're gonna inhale 5 seconds, exhale 5 seconds, or whatever rhythm is good for you. And while you're doing this, guys, make a sincere attempt to experience a regenerative feeling, such as appreciation or care. I like to think of my dogs, Kismet and Moxie, but think of something that you appreciate and love. All right, come on back. So with practice, it gets easier, like if you find your mind wandering. Um, but usually we get the warm fuzzies when we think about something that we love. And then the next tool after that is learning how to sustain it, which is much, much harder. But at least if you practice this out and about in the world, like when things are not stressful, because I had a client who, this is so funny, he came in and that initial heart breathing technique was called neutral. It's just to put you in like in a neutral space, not necessarily a positive space. He came in, Kristina, neutral is not working. It's not working. I said, well, have you been practicing this, every day, like on the hour? No, I haven't. You say, you can't wait until the stressful moment hits and now that's not going to do it, right? Okay, so Alex's pace of aging in 5 months. How did he do this? What did he do? I want to give you some of the secrets besides the stopping eating earlier. He followed a low carb diet. Shocker. He was doing 36-hour fasts 1 time a week. The earlier dinner, like I mentioned, he started exercising. Oh, he was taking targeted supplements. His sleep was pretty bad. So he took a vacation. This busy CEO, he needed a vacation. And we started doing some Heartmath. So thank you, everybody. We're going to break now for lunch. Enjoy.